Hello everybody, I want to welcome you back to the YouTube channel, and today's video is going to be very special because I'm going to be giving you basically my opinion on the foreign policy that is coming out of the United States today. This is really important because I am very concerned as an American citizen on how my government is really moving forward with our foreign policy, most specifically with the country of China. Now, to start today's video, I'm going to bring up a recent article entitled, "America Will Only Win When China's Regime Fails." Now, this is a very interesting article, and already in the title alone, there's many issues that I have with this statement. The first of all is the word regime. And let's just take a moment and look what the actual dictionary definition is of the word regime. In its most simplest form can just mean a form of government. So on the surface, it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with calling China's government a regime. But the reality is that in the English language, we can take certain words and actually imply them to mean different things. Let me give you a further example of what I mean. When I shared this article on Twitter, this is one of the top comments that came back. The word regime is itself meant to convey an illegitimacy or even criminality to the other government. It's wrong, it's undiplomatic, and ultimately it is dangerous. We saw what policy of regime change did to the US, Iraq, and the greater Middle East. No good comes from it. When you use the word regime to your United States viewers, you are basically implying the fact that we need to change this government. And I don't believe that changing China's government is in the best interest of America. Now, the article goes on to state there are many possible outcomes to the Sino-American competition, from the United States ceding a sphere of influence to China. Hey, China, it's the United States. You know what we've decided to do? We basically have this huge global influence. We're going to go ahead and concede and give you a very small piece of that, and that's going to be your portion. How does that sound? To mutual accommodation. Hey, China, it's the United States. We can learn to work together. How does that sound? To Chinese collapse. Wait a second. Did you say China collapse? You think that's one of the options? I mean, let's just look at the events of the past 12 months. China was one of the first countries in the world to properly handle the COVID-19 pandemic. Wasn't it China's economy that was the only one to experience an actual GDP growth in the year 2020? Isn't it true that many of the Chinese citizens and many of its people actually support the government, considering the fact that 80% of the world's poverty alleviation has happened in the country of China these last 30 years, and the people's quality of life and everything is improving literally day by day in China? Oh, okay, I guess we can make that argument that maybe China could collapse. To a devastating global conflict. Well, I guess that is one of the options. If the United States does aggressively try to invade China, it will be a devastating global conflict. Now, this is the really interesting thing about this article, and this is what I shared on my Twitter this afternoon. This shows the arrogance and ignorance of American politicians. One country's government has grown considerably stronger this past year, while the other has grown weaker. Let's call a spade a spade. There is a better chance of America's government collapsing than China's. When we're looking at the two countries, the United States and China, we have to just be realistic about things. China's government is nowhere close to collapsing. That entire concept is just completely bizarre and completely off basis. China's government, over the past 12 months specifically, it has gotten more trust from the actual citizens in China. Now, why is America so obsessed with the idea that China one day will collapse? Well, it doesn't help when you get guys like this, Gordon Chang, who has become the poster boy for being the China expert. Gordon is a regular on the Fox News channel, and again, anything related to China, Gordon Chang is brought in. He's a Chinese American. He's extremely anti-China. And here's the interesting thing. For the past 20 years, Gordon Chang has been calling for this collapse of China. He wrote a groundbreaking book, The Coming Collapse of China. But guess what? It was published in 2001. Literally 20 years, Gordon Chang has been calling for the collapse of China. China has collapsed to the second largest economy in the world. And remember COVID-19? That has only accelerated China's progress, and now it will overtake America as the #1 economy in just a few short years. Again, if we have to just be very realistic right here, and again, I'm speaking from the heart as an American, We cannot look at China and think that they are in a position of weakness. China is getting stronger. Meanwhile, let's look in the mirror. Look at America right now. Our government, our form of democracy, has never in the history of America been as weak as it is right now. And this is the interesting thing. America is always going out saying that China needs to change. China needs to embrace democracy. Only when China embraces democracy and the American way will China be able to achieve success. But that is not true. That theory has been proven wrong, and China has proven to the world that there is another way to do this. And that is something that American politicians must learn to accept. But in this article, it gives a different perspective, and it tells exactly what America is hoping for. The pivotal question becomes whether the United States can achieve this outcome by changing the minds of Chinese leaders, or whether it will require the decline of the Chinese power or the downfall of the Chinese Communist Party. Again, if you are looking at these two countries, which country is honestly, experiencing a decline in its legitimacy, in its government, in its trust? It's certainly America. Let's just be honest here. Right now in America, millions of Americans still believe that Joe Biden is president because he stole the election. And again, going through the whole debacle of the 2020 presidential election, it really questions the legitimacy of the American government. More and more people in America are losing trust in democracy, they're losing trust in America's government, and this is the biggest issue with America. We are so obsessed with being number one in the world that we truly fail to look at the biggest problem, and that is looking in the mirror to finding out the change that needs to be made. In this article from CNBC, Biden must draw red lines against China and focus on Xi Jinping's authoritarian leadership. The author of this article was asked about what would a successful United States foreign policy look like in the years ahead, and this is what he answered. That by mid-century, the United States and its major allies continue to dominate the regional and global balance of power across all the major indices of power. Let me translate that for you. Basically, I'm America, and I just want me and all my closest friends, the UK, Australia, basically any other Western form of government, we want to be number one, and that's what would define success. Certainly not China. China's not like us. They're an authoritarian regime. We need to take down China. So what would a good foreign policy campaign look like? Well, it'd of course be America's number one, and our closest allies are right behind us. That Xi has been replaced by a more moderate party leadership, and that the Chinese people themselves have come to question and challenge the Communist Party's century-long proposition that China's ancient civilization is forever destined to an authoritarian future. Now, this is the really interesting thing that American politicians are focusing a tremendous amount of time on. They're asking Chinese people to rise up, to question the legitimacy of their government, and to basically start a revolution. And this is what American foreign policy is hinging on right now. And this is such a backwards mentality, because the reality is if you go to China and you see what has happened in China over the last 40 years, you will see that the Communist Party is respected and it is trusted in China. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that China's communist government is not without its problems. Every government in the world has problems, including China's, including America's. That's not the issue right here. What we need to look at is we need to look at China from the lens of a Chinese person. Let me give you some valuable perspective. Let's imagine that you are a grandmother or a grandfather in China today. Now, you would have seen China in some of the darkest days in history. You would have lived through the Cultural Revolution. You would have lived through the Great Leap Forward, and you now see a much more prosperous China. Let's imagine that you're a mother or father, middle-aged and in China right now. Probably as a child, you didn't have much, but now you have much greater opportunities, and you're very optimistic about the future of your country because you've been able to experience firsthand this incredible rise of China becoming the second largest economy in the world. Now finally, let's imagine that you're a college student or even a young child, someone even younger, let's say below the age of 12. The only thing that you've experienced in China is a prosperous and rising China. So again, we have to stop looking at China from these American lenses. We have to stop saying, well, China doesn't have freedom of speech. Therefore, it can't be a legitimate government. Well, China doesn't have the right to protest. Its citizens are actually slaves. Stop looking at things from an American or Western point of view. Put yourself in the shoes of Chinese people. If you are that grandmother, that mother, that college student, that young child, and you look at China from that perspective, you will be able to see China and its government in a very different light. Now let's go back to that previous article that highlighted the many possibilities of the Sino-American relationship moving forward. And again, one of the options that the author listed here is mutual accommodation. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know very much that I am passionate both about the country of America and China. And definitely, mutual accommodation, learning to work together, mutual respect is what is needed between these two countries. The world is large enough for both the United States and China to win, and most importantly, if the two countries can learn to work together, this is how the world is going to move forward. But the biggest thing that we have to change for America, we have to get rid of this idea that we need to change China. Now, many of you who are watching this, you might be thinking, Cyrus, you're taking too much of a pro-China stance. You are not supporting America, you are not supporting your government. But let me just be really honest with you right now. Do you know how much it hurts to be an American citizen and to look at your country and to see it collapsing right in front of you right now? America has so many problems that we need to look at, but all we're focused on is trying to change China. But why do we want to change China? Because we want to be number one in the world. Let's just face the reality. China's population is 4 times that of America. China will inevitably become the world superpower. That's okay. We don't always have to be number one because China still respects America. China still wants to have a trade relationship with America. Chinese parents still want to send their kids to an American university. There are so many positive, things that are happening in America. It's not like America is going to collapse if we drop down to number 2. But the problem is that America's government and our way of life is declining tremendously right now. Look at the problems that are happening in America right now. Crime is increasing across the United States. Racial inequality, probably it's been its worst time in the last 60 years. Incarcerations are increasing. Our education system is getting worse. Poverty is increasing. There is so many areas of America that needs to improve, and our politicians have become obsessed with trying to change China. And it really hurts me right now as an American. Because I do love my country. I'm incredibly grateful for being born in the United States of America. I'm incredibly grateful for growing up in the state of Florida and going to school and being educated in America. I had a wonderful life growing up in America. But now that I've been abroad for 14 years, it really pains me to see the status of my home country. Do you know what it feels like to be an American citizen and to have your 76-year-old mother call you and say the best thing that you ever did in your life, Cyrus, was to leave this country? How do you think that makes me feel as an American? How do you think it makes me feel when your 76-year-old mother a few months ago calls you and says, I've had to purchase a handgun because I do not feel safe in my own home anymore? These are the real issues that are pressing Americans right now. But again, our politicians are absolutely obsessed with trying to change China. Changing China and a government that is supported by over 90% of the people. They're just so obsessed with taking down China that they fail to see America, the house that they live in, literally on fire. Now everybody, you can see that from today's video, I'm speaking passionately. I'm speaking from my heart because I genuinely want America to succeed. But I just don't see how that's going to be possible if we fail to look at ourselves in the mirror and we fail to address the issues that we have domestically. I feel that we are so concerned with trying to maintain our status as number one that we will do anything we can to try to take down China. Meanwhile, what does China do? Does China care that America is a democracy? Absolutely not. Does China care about any other form of government in the world? Absolutely not. China's focus is inwardly. China wants to improve its country and, for the betterment of its citizens. That's literally what China has been doing for the last 40 years. And they've been doing it extremely well. So instead of actually, wanting to change China, why don't we actually try to learn a little bit from China? Why don't we learn to build some great relationships? Why don't we learn to build more trade so we can increase jobs and increase the prosperity of Americans? These are the things that we need to do. This is the purpose of this channel, is to help people see a better side of learning to work with China. So the next time somebody tells you that the rise of China is the biggest threat in the world, I think we need to look at it from a different perspective. Forget the rise of China. Let's focus on the collapse of America that is literally taking place right now. Everybody, I want to thank you so much for listening to me. As you saw in today's video, I was very passionate and I was speaking from my heart because, again, I love America. It is my home country, but my heart is broken. It is very sad because it's just amazing how clueless some of our US politicians are about the global economy that we live in. China is not our greatest enemy. China is a potential greatest partner for us if we can actually learn to work together. And I'll say it again, when the United States learns to work with China, the entire world is going to win. Everybody, thanks for taking time out of your day to watch it with me here on YouTube. I wish you all the best moving forward. Let's learn to build bridges and let's learn to respect China. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.